Callouts and trash talk is a major part of any combat sport and is certainly the lifeblood of boxing, since named fighters can go months and months without any fight even being made official for them, let alone any battle happening. So it's no surprise that Chris Eubank Jr. made some derisive comments about Conor Benn's punching power ahead of their upcoming bout. We'll be letting you in on all the details as the video progresses, so be sure to stick around till the end. What has the build-up to this fight been like? Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn are truly like something out of a movie. Specifically, they're a little bit reminiscent of Creed 2, though there wasn't any murder between the two families, at least as far as we know. Otherwise, they follow the story of Donnie Creed and Victor Drago pretty nicely. Two second-generation fighters whose fathers were rivals back in the day. They are as such pretty natural foes for one another today. In fact, the bout between the two of them, which will be taking place in the O2 in London, has been given the billing of born rivals due to their very unique story between the two of them. And as such, the fight shall be airing on DAZN PPV, assuming everything stays the same as it was originally planned. That's sadly not a given. See, the fight was going to be taking place on October 8th. At the time of writing, that date has very much come and gone, and the fight has not happened. Why? Well, on October 5th, when the fight was just 3 days away from taking place, it was announced that Benn had failed a drug test. He tested positive for clomiphene, a drug that's intended to be used to treat infertility in non-ovulating women. Obviously, the matchmakers weren't too happy with the idea of him ovulating mid-fight. Oh wait, it seems the drug can also have testosterone-boosting effects in men. Benn and his promoter, Eddie Hearn, tried to dispute the finding and have remained steadfast that the test was a false positive. For a while, Hearn was adamant that the fight would take place on October 8th as scheduled, but yeah, that still hasn't happened yet at the time of writing. Ultimately, the fight was postponed, and at the moment, it's hard to say when it will happen. At the very least, we're going to have to wait out the investigation from the UK doping agency. If by chance they find out that the test was indeed a false positive, then maybe we'll see the fight sooner rather than later. Otherwise, though, it may be a while before the bout takes place. Whenever it does happen, it will be for the WBA Continental Welterweight Championship, at least assuming that no governing body sees fit to strip Benn of the belt. Hasn't Conor Benn been a scrutinized champion even before this drug test? That would be correct, yes. Benn has come under a lot of fire even before the testing for the perceived protection that he's been getting from his promoter, Eddie Hearn. The idea has been that Hearn has kept him away from facing too many heavy hitters during his 6-year career and thus shielding his less than stellar jaw. At least that's what the detractors would tell you. When Benn did face off against a big puncher in the French Cedric Peynaud, it made for a hellacious battle for him as he was dropped twice, and though he did end up winning the 6-round fight in a points decision, that was a highly controversial decision, as many debate to this day that Peynaud easily had the fight won in points. Of course, social media judges aren't generally quite as qualified as the real ones, but it was a popular and understandable sentiment on this day. Among the names at the 147 weight class that Benn has, for whatever reason, never faced off against in a title bout, we have folks like Jaron Boots Ennis, Virgil Ortiz Jr., Imantas Stanionis, Keith Thurman, Yordenis Ugas, and David Avanesyan. That last name is pretty notable, as Avanesyan has repeatedly called Benn out for a fight, and with a record of 29-3-1, he's looking like a pretty worthy challenger, especially considering that he's the reigning European welterweight champion, has been since 2019, and has successfully defended that belt 5 times. And to be honest, neither Benn nor Hearn have even denied that Avanesyan deserves a title match. Instead, Hearn explained that the reason the fight won't be taking place is because, in his words, Avanesyan is too experienced and thus the fight is not fair. He argued that the 26-year-old fighter should have time to get more fights and have more experience before he takes him on. Suffice to say, that feels like an excuse to many, and certainly, if you're from the Avanesyan camp, it seems a little unfair to effectively have a promoter saying you're overqualified for the title bout, essentially. All the same, if the idea is that a heavy hitter is a scary proposition for Conor Benn, then it stands to reason that Chris Eubank Jr. should be quite confident in his upcoming fight fight whenever it does happen. Even being drained from a dehydrating weight loss regimen to get him down to welterweight, some would still favor the challenger in such a bout. So what did Eubank Jr. have to say about his future opponent? The up-and-coming challenger spoke to DAZN Boxing and had plenty to say about Benn, talking about his aggressiveness in the ring, and said that all those attributes will end up getting him in a lot of trouble once they finally square up and square off against each other. He's noted that he's come a long way in the past few years, comparing himself at 22 and himself now at 26, and saying that he's made some big improvements. He did, of course, say much the same about Benn, noting that he improves with every fight he has, and says he's now at a stage where he thinks he's on the level with the big boys and can take on anybody. The two of them have naturally known each other for a very long time, given how far back each other's families go. Eubank Jr. mentioned that, quote, "At this stage in 2019, I wasn't looking at him as a potential opponent. I always said how amazing that would be if we ever got into the ring," end quote. And indeed, we're finally getting closer to that day. Now, at least, we can only hope. He spoke of how he's maturing as a fighter and said that Benn is really becoming a monster. When talking about his title defense against Samuel Vargas, Eubank Jr. called Benn relentless, saying he's really got that fire and wants to hurt you. Eubank Jr. painted the two of them as quite similar, as they each have something to prove, and noted how he was coming up in his career. He felt a particular need to show that he was not a gimmick, and it wasn't mere nepotism that got him booked in these fights. Of course, these days he feels that pressure a lot less, believing that he's already achieved a lot and proven himself. Undoubtedly, this is something that he and Conor Benn can relate to each other on, as they very much paralleled one another. Eubank Jr. said that the pressure was what made him so relentless and kept him from being content with getting a point decision. He explained that he couldn't simply jab a guy's head off and get the decision and have it be the end of it, because the expectations on him were just too great, and that he had too many haters and doubters and online trolls saying things about him. He didn't want to give them any ammunition, and so he had to go in there and take people out and get those KO victories. He believes that Benn is very much the same way. In speaking about his fight with Chris Algieri, Eubank Jr. again said that Benn is growing, since Algieri is a former world champ, a very experienced guy, and yet Benn absolutely demolished him, hitting with heavy-handed blows. However, Chris made it clear that Algieri doesn't have the kind of chin that he has. He further explained, quote, "If Conor can connect with that kind of shot against me, I'm going to smile in his face. I'm not going down like Chris Algieri did," end quote. He finished by asking the question, when that happens and he gets that big shot in and sees him smiling, saying, "Yeah, come on, where's the next one?" Just how is the champion going to react to that? Eubank Jr. says that the thing we're all going to find out when the two born rivals face each other. And that is all the time we have for today's video. Do you believe that Eddie Hearn has been unjustifiably protective of Conor Benn and coddling of the champion? Are you of the belief that when Benn and Eubank Jr. finally square off, Benn is going to be in grave danger? Do you maybe still wish that it was David Avenazine who was getting this title shot instead? One day, he'll get his due, no doubt.
Make sure to like the video, comment down below, and of course, subscribe to the channel with the notification bell rung.